My name's Robert, and I'm an addict.
Robert.
Let's go ahead and open the meeting up with a moment of silence, followed by the we version of the Serenity Prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, the wisdom to know the difference. All right. There's a lot of identification of really understanding of what this disease really is that's found in the Who's an Addict chapter, and that's page 3 in the book that you guys have, the 6th edition. In my book, it's page 1, and I'm doing it out of the 2nd edition of the Narcotics Anonymous Basic Text. So the book you guys have there came out in 2005. This one came out in late 1982. There's not a whole lot of difference about what Who's an Addict is. It's really minuscule. There's just a couple little words in it that change up, but it's worth it to kind of know that it's a little different than what you guys are paying attention to, so you can learn a little history lesson to see how much has changed over the years, and it gives you a little bit more even reason to try to focus on what I'm reading here, because I'm going to throw in a little bit here and there as we go along, and kind of I call this kind of stuff like double tap. I'm reading it, but then I'll stop every paragraph or every other paragraph and kind of hit my own experience, strength, and hope with things. And by doing that, I found that most people identify quicker. I know when it was broke down to me that way, light bulbs turned on and gears clicked in that never made sense to me before. Parts of the book started coming alive for me that just didn't make sense before. I was like, yeah. Just like anything else, we're reading it to get to the end, and we're not really looking at, each little individual sentence or whatever it is. So chapter 1, Who's an Addict, to me is, we usually come to our first meetings and we raise our hands, I'm an addict, without really doing any homework on the matter of what an addict really is, what is the real disease model of it is. And in Narcotics Anonymous, you can read every piece of literature that we have on the disease of addiction, where it even talks about it, and it'll pretty much always just says we concern ourselves with the nature of recovery, not the nature of being an addict. It even says that, I think, in this chapter, that we don't really bother ourselves with how, why, or whatever, what made us the addict, or whatever. It's really not important. If we have the disease, we've got it, and there's nothing we can do about it. Knowing whether Grandpa traveled through Grandpa's DNA, or whether we acquired it from just constant abuse of drugs that we became an addict or whatever. It's just tries to make sense of it that way. And a lot of this program is connecting our intellectual head of what we're reading and what we're paying attention to, and it really hitting us in the heart. And like, yeah, I am one, because if you're an addict like we are, then we haven't found any other solution that works for us other than this spiritual way of life that the rest of this book talks about. So really being committed to, if I don't think I really have this disease as bad as all you other guys do, I may not want to work my program as vigorously as everybody else. I may think that I'm not as sick as you guys, and I'm more of this and that, and I didn't have a problem with this drug or that drug. It's not about the disease of addiction. I just had a problem with doing that drug, and I can do this drug on the side. The disease of addiction isn't drug specific. This disease, my experience is that I've never met a drug that I didn't learn to like, with the exception of Sherm. Super cools, man. I did that. I gave that shit a second try, and I couldn't do it. That shit just drove me too crazy. It was not fun, and I got way too crazy, way too quick, and I knew that I was going to wind up doing some serious time the way that shit made me feel. So I just didn't mess with it anymore. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start reading on this thing here. And I'm going to try to get a link or two posted on this of this thing, on the step thing, so people can look in other places. There's a couple other places in YouTube where they really do a great job of breaking down what the disease model of addiction is. And even though it's outside the realm of Narcotics Anonymous, I find it, I pass it on and turn on to everybody that I know, that I work with. To get an understanding. So about a 25-minute video this one lady does, and she does a really good job of breaking down of we are different than normal people, and it's good to understand those things. So anyway, without going on any longer, I'm going to go ahead and start here. Chapter 1, Who's an Addict? Most of us do not have to think twice about this question. We know. Our whole life and thinking is centered in drugs in one form or another. The getting and using and finding ways and means to get more. We use to live and live to use. Very simply, an addict is a man or woman whose life is controlled by drugs. We are people in the grip of a continuing and progressive illness whose ends are always the same: jails, institutions, and death. Those of us who have found the program on Narcotics Anonymous do not have to think twice about the question, who is an addict? We know. The following is our experience. As addicts, we are people whose use of any mind-altering, mood-changing substance causes a problem in any area of life, and we don't stop. We keep going anyway. Addiction is a disease that involves more than simple drug use. Some of us believe that our disease was present long before the first time we ever used. And I identify strongly with that. Before drugs were ever in the ball, even a problem. From a very young age, I was a liar, cheat, and thief right out of the box. My first caper, I was like 6 years old, and those little nifty nickel flyer things that they used to hang on the door hangers to sell people. I noticed that the guy that going around the neighborhood that was hanging them on doors, they had these full-size packages of Star Boost candy. And so my first real big caper as a kid was I followed this dude around the neighborhood, ditched school, it was first or second grade. I can't remember exactly which one it was. So I was 6 or 7 years old, and I ditched school, followed this dude around everywhere, and stole as much Starburst candy as I could for most of the day. And I had this stuff falling everywhere. I didn't have enough places in my bedroom to hide it and go back and put it away. And I got caught from it. I got caught from stealing from it, but I remember the first one. It was like I stole the first stuff. It was free. I ate some, and it was brand new. It was a candy I had never tasted before, and I liked it a lot. And I was like, I can't. One was too many. 1,000 never enough. I mean, literally, I couldn't be cool with going and following this dude and hitting 4 or 5 houses on my way to school. I lived about 3/4 of a mile away from my elementary school, and I walked to school in the morning. I wasn't happy with just that. I mean, literally, I hit the whole development and got as much candy as I possibly could. Had to steal a bag to put the stuff in. Nobody taught me how to steal stuff. Right out of the back. Just boom. I didn't know why, but I knew that I needed more. And for me, that's the earliest memory of the disease really kicking in, of more and not knowing why. I vaguely knew what I was doing was wrong because, I knew I had to lie about it, come up with a story about where all this candy came from, and that people were going to find these wrappers and stuff around all the place, and I was going to have someone explaining. So immediately I had to get into some lying, and of course, I got caught and got grounded, and it didn't stop me. I still kept doing more and more things, and after that, it moved on to yo-yos and toy army men and marbles. It didn't matter what little thing that I got into. I had to have the biggest and best set out of anybody around. And I would lie and steal and manipulate whatever I had to do to try to get more than my fair share from the other kids that were in the neighborhood. And that selfishness that coupled with the disease of addiction, that trying to fill this inside void with outside stuff. If I just get enough, I'm going to be happy. The delusion that I'm finally going to, I just need more of this and I'm going to be happy. I didn't know what was driving me or why I had to go do these things. And through all these cycles of stealing stuff, I remember my mom over and over and over. We didn't raise you to be this way. Why do you do these things? And I'd be like, well, I don't know. I didn't know back then, I know today I had a craving for more beyond my mental control. I did not have the ability to tell myself no. I had a bright idea and the mission was on. Just obsessively and compulsively as it was with dope later on in life. That's exactly how I treated it. The bright idea, nobody looking. I was an only child, so I was left unsupervised quite a bit, but that wouldn't have mattered. I would just have to be more sneaky. I know me that it wouldn't matter. I could have had the Brady Bunch kind of family, and with what I had going on upstairs, I was going to be exactly the kind of person that I was right out of the box. It wasn't that my parents didn't love me and didn't raise me better, although I blamed them for a lot of my stuff when I was growing up. It was convenient, but reality is nobody taught me how to do the stuff that I did. It was like right off the bat, more. And so when they talk about this in the book, about most of us. Some of us, many of us, believed that we were addict before we ever picked up the first drug. The important part about that in the disease of addiction is that if that was before I ever did drugs, that now that I'm abstinent, I am still going to be suffering from the disease of addiction. And if I don't tap into some power greater than myself that can relieve me of the obsessive compulsive behavior to keep on craving more and more and more of something, which I believe is exactly what I was trying to do, was fix an inside hole with the outside stuff. If I don't get busy trying to fill this inside hole with the right kind of stuff, then I'm going to go back. Being a newcomer in recovery, I'm going to wind up doing the same thing in recovery. And I tell you, I did exactly those things in and out of the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous for many years. I chased a girlfriend back out. I chased a career at Taco Bell back out. Came in and got clean, got my life together, and I kept doing extra hours at this job and chasing the extra dollars. Didn't matter what it was. Lots of different things that I would put in front of my recovery and wind up relapsing because of it, because I started chasing the wrong stuff. I come into recovery, I do my 90 meetings in 90 days, I get some clean time, things that start going favorably for me. And the minute the heat was off my back, I'd start chasing other obsessive compulsive behavior. And I thought when I was younger, in my early teens or my late teens in Narcotics Anonymous, I came to my first meetings when I was 15 years old. So I was taught a lot about the disease during that time of being in and out. I'd always thought in the early days of recovery that any addiction was okay as long as it wasn't dope. That shit's going to get me locked up. I got to commit felonies to keep that kind of supply going that I need to do dope. So as long as I get obsessed in other things, girls or pornography or gambling or whatever, whatever it was that I decided to get obsessed with, cars and motorcycles and boats, whatever it was that I got obsessed with, any other obsession was okay. And for me, I found that to be completely false, that I have to have balance in my recovery today. And that's exactly what we find in the rest of the steps. I'm just bringing light to this because to me, anything that I allow my disease of addiction to come full blown obsessive compulsive nature in me, that it grabs me like that I'm probably going to allow it to separate me from recovery. So I have to be really, really careful, especially when I'm a newcomer, to not pick up the wrong kind of hobbies and obsessive things in my life, because if I do, I'm probably going to wind up back out there getting loaded again. And my experience with seeing newcomers, many newcomers coming in and out of the rooms, I can tell you from tons of experience, countless times people come in, they get clean, see tons of young guys, somewhere around the 60, 90-day clean mark, they see her. And I got to get me some of that, and what's happened is we get clean and we take away the dope, which is our solution to life. So we lose our best friend, which is the drugs, the thing we took all of our problems to that worked really good for a long time. I don't have drugs in this hole anymore, and I haven't worked the steps and got anything significant to get my spirituality going yet. This hole begs to be filled with something, and it talks about it in the second step, that void demands that we fill it with something. And if we don't get busy working the steps, filling that void with the right stuff, the obsessive compulsive behavior is going to take us back out, period. I know I've drawn that, I've taken this way far for just getting this in the book, but that point's super important because I need to be well informed about what this disease can do, and if I'm going to get obsessed about anything, the most important thing I should be doing about recovery is being obsessed about recovery, put this passion of obsessive compulsive behavior towards getting involved, doing my 90 meetings in 90 days. My first 4 months this time, I wasn't working, that 20 years ago, when I first came in, I did 3 or 4 meetings a day, usually a steady 3. I got up in the morning, I went to a 7 a.m. meeting, came home, I did a few chores, I hit a noon meeting, and I hit an evening meeting after I got dinner ready for the rest of the family. And I jumped in with both feet in this program, and I really was doing it to the extreme, a little obsessive compulsively, but and I did have to back it up later on because my family kind of started feeling the pain of me always running out the damn door. And so we can get a little carried away with being too deep into recovery. But out of anything that I'm going to get obsessive and compulsive about, recovery is probably the only thing I can take a chance at doing that with. And yes, it's a cult. Yes, we have a lot of sayings around here. By definition, Narcotics Anonymous, I'm sorry, we fit the cult mode. I need brainwashing. I'm sorry. My brain's defective. It's broken. It's got a lot of sick, crazy thoughts, and it makes perfectly good sense inside my head here. And that's why the therapeutic value of one addict works when nothing else has. This is the only thing I found. They tried medicine, religion, and psychiatry on me before I ever picked up my first drug. And so I knew that those things weren't going to work for me later on in life. Narcotics Anonymous has been the only thing that's been able to really put the right thing in this hole so I feel okay. So anyway, Narcotics Anonymous, most of us did not consider ourselves addicted before coming to the Narcotics Anonymous program. The information available to us came from misinformed people. As long as we could stop using for a while, we thought we were all right. We looked at the stopping and not the using. As our addiction progressed, we thought of stopping less and less. Only in desperation did we ask ourselves, could it be the drugs? We didn't choose to become addicts. We suffer from disease from which it expresses itself in ways that are antisocial, and that makes detection, diagnosis, and treatment difficult. Our disease isolated us from people except when we were getting, using, and finding ways and means to get more. Hostile, resentful, self-centered, and self-seeking, we cut ourselves off from the outside world. Anything not completely familiar to us became alien and dangerous. Our world shrank, and isolation became our way of life. We used in order to survive. It was the only way of life we knew. And they start breaking down the whole progression of where the disease starts off with, working really good in the beginning, and then where it takes us to as we go along. Some of us misused, and abused drugs and still didn't consider ourselves addicts. Through all this, we kept telling ourselves, I can handle it. Our misconception about the nature of addiction conjured up visions of violence, street crime, dirty needles, and jail. When our addiction was treated as a crime or a moral deficiency, we became rebellious and were driven deeper into isolation. Some of the highs felt great, but eventually the things that we had to do in order to support our using reflected desperation. We were caught in the grip of our disease. We were forced to survive any way we could. We manipulated people and tried to control everything around us. We lied, stole, cheated, and sold ourselves. We had to have drugs regardless of the costs. Failure and fear began to invade our lives. Most of that kind of stuff, weren't even conscious of most of that stuff even happening, but we can look back in hindsight, we can see all those kind of things happening. I didn't prostitute myself because I was too fat and I was a white boy. If I'd have been a skinny chick that was good looking, I would have been selling my ass on a pole every damn day. I'll bet money on it. I know I would have. If I'd have had something I could have marketed like that, I'd have sold myself. But I did sell myself to my dope man. Anytime my dope man's car broke down, I was there for him. So I was his best friend, his car, any issue, anything he needed me for, I would be there. My dope man was the only one that I was ever able to be a good friend to. Everybody else was kind of like, I'll get to you when I can, when it's convenient, if you didn't have something valuable to me, everything I did had a string to it. I wasn't doing anything just to be a nice guy. That's for damn sure. We had to have drugs regardless of the cost. Failure and fear began to invade our lives. One aspect of our addiction was our inability to deal with life on life's terms. Way before drugs, that was my problem. I was oversensitive, over-emotional, and every feeling I felt was severe. I remember not too much back when the candy caper started off, but I remember at like 9 years old staring at the ceiling, because I was always getting in trouble at school for fighting and getting in trouble, lying, cheating, stealing all the time. You get a lot of problems all the time. You're always in trouble for something. And I'd be staring at the ceiling, man, and be thinking, God, you must have dropped me on the wrong planet by mistake, because I just don't feel like I fit in here. I look out the window and my buddies are out there, the guys that I grew up with, they're running around, kicking the soccer ball around, playing stickball on the street. I'm always busy chasing the next something. Once in a while I participated in doing those things, but when they didn't want to play the game the way I wanted to play the game, or the game I wanted to play, then piss off. I went and I did my own things. I couldn't compromise. I couldn't, being that selfish, I didn't have the ability to to be flexible. Either things were going my way and you were either for me or you were against me. And if you weren't for me, then fuck you. I didn't have no time for you, and kick rocks, and I was down the road. But I could see them all out there just having fun, playing with whatever it is that they did have. And I was always seemed to be on the mission to get more marbles, get more toy army men, get more yo-yos, get a better skateboard, something. There was always something that I was fixated on and obsessed with, trying to run the fun out of it, thinking that if I got to a certain level with whatever it was that I was chasing, that I was going to find that ultimate happiness that I was looking for. So I was hiding from my inability to deal with life on life's terms. We tried drugs and combination of drugs in an effort to cope with a seemingly hostile world. We dreamed of finding the magic formula that would solve our ultimate problems, ourselves. The fact was that we could not successfully use any mind-altering, mood-changing substance, including marijuana and alcohol. Drugs ceased to make us feel good. Now, in the beginning, when I first came to my first NA meetings, at the young age, drugs were still feeling really good for me. It wasn't until I was late into my 20s when the drugs were making me feel no good. Before that, in my early stages, for me, when I was first coming to NA, I had a back problem. I couldn't get my mom off my back. I couldn't get the law off my back. Juvenile authorities was always locking me up. Judge Guzman at Zenoff Hall was always, I was always in front of him. So there's always those kind of things going off. And those outside pressures gave me the desire to get clean several times. But deep inside, the only reason I was getting clean was because everybody was on my back. It wasn't because the drugs weren't working for me anymore. When in the beginning, the drugs worked really well. And in fact, the first time I ever got loaded, for the first time when I was right at 13 years old, and we moved from Southern California here to Las Vegas, and I tried weed a few times and it really didn't do nothing for me, but I got really screwed up this one week when I first moved here to Vegas. And I remember the distinct feeling that as long as I get more of that shit, I can handle all you fucking people out here. That I could deal with people, because I was suicidal at that point already. And I knew that I was probably going to blow my head off, because I'd already told my mom that she had to lock up the guns in the house, because I was already thinking about those kind of things. So lock the guns up, put the ammunition away, because I don't want to be here anymore. I didn't know how to process life. I was oversensitive to everything. But I also remember that the minute I found that, got loaded, that finally lit that fuse. And it was like plugging in a Christmas tree that hadn't been plugged in yet, right? It looks dark and gloomy, and then you plug it in, it's like, wow. And I was like, okay, cool. Maybe I'll see 18 years old. And I still believe that today, that had I not found drugs and had just been on that self-will run riot, the kid with the most toys had to win type of mentality that I was before I found drugs, that I probably would have eaten a bullet. That the medicating of getting loaded and being sedated with the drugs for as long as I did, I think it did give me, it got me through my teen and pubescent years, without eating a bullet. So it did work for me. And the drugs were still making me feel good back then. But these are just talking about the different points. So they're not always in the same order for all of us. This book doesn't do it's not an exact chronological things, but you're going to find that most of these little paragraphs will line up with, if you're an addict like us, you're going to be like, yeah, I hit that phase. Yeah, I hit that phase. Yeah, I hit that phase. And if you find enough of those phases where you identify with, you're probably most definitely one of us. So drugs ceased to make us feel good. At times we were defensive about our addiction and justified our right to use, especially when we had legal prescriptions like my wife did. We were proud of the sometimes illegal and often bizarre behavior that typified our using. We forgot about the times when we sat alone, consumed by fear and self-pity. We fell into a pattern of selective thinking. We only remembered the good drug experience. Isn't that funny how that works out? No matter how bad we get our shit screwed up, our brains can take all the bad shit that drugs ever did to us and put it right in the back corner. We can't even remember why we stopped in the first place. And the only thing we can remember is all the good shit that they did. We only remember the good drug experiences. That's what happens. Those strange mental blank spots where it makes the one thing that's been destroying our life the most important thing in the world to us. And we give up everything else in our life for this one thing that's been destroying us. I mean, And that's what our brains do. We justified and rationalized the things that we had to do to keep from being sick or going crazy. We ignored the times when life seemed to be a nightmare. We avoided the reality of our addiction. Higher mental and emotional functions, such as a conscience and the ability to love, were sharply affected by our use of drugs. Living skills were reduced to the animal level. Our spirit was broken. The capacity to feel human was lost. This seems extreme, but many of us have been to this state of mind. How many of you guys have been to that state of mind? Most everybody in this room, right? Have been to that state of mind at one time or another. Normal people never get to that state of mind. They have their glass and a half of wine. They smoke part of a joint. Maybe they hit a bump or a line here or there at a party, and they get a little tipsy or whatever, and they stop. They don't run their life to the ground until the wheels are coming off of the shit to where they get to this state of mind. Normal people are like, hey, I'm not going to finish college if I keep doing this shit, or I'm not going to graduate high school. The love of my life is going to leave me. I'm going to quit doing dope. I'm never going to get that career I want. I'm never going to get that basketball career I wanted. And they stop. And I had friends that I went to high school that early on, they used just like I did. And when it got time to graduate, some of them were like making decisions like, I got to go home, I got to study, I got to pass these exams or I'm not going to graduate. We still got dope here. Where are you going? I didn't understand. I couldn't tell myself no. There was still dope to be done. I was doing it, but friends of mine that used just like me in those early days, by my eyes and my perspective, they stopped and made the right decision, turned around and went home and went to bed. Didn't get rolled up by the police later on that night like I did. Didn't catch cases like I did. They went out, they had a little fun, they experimented, they did some things, and then boom, they moved on. So normal people do that. We keep trying to figure out how we're going to outsmart it all. We're constantly searching for the answer, that person, place, or thing that would make everything all right if I get the right girl. We lack the ability to cope with daily living. As our addiction caught up with us, many of us found ourselves in and out of institutions. These experiences indicated that there was something wrong with our lives. We wanted an easy way out, and some of us thought of suicide. Our attempts were usually feeble and only helped to contribute to our feelings of worthlessness. We were trapped by the illusion of what if only, and just one more time. When we did seek help, we were really only looking for the absence of pain. I just want to come in, and we see this in the rooms at NA all the time, man. People come in here and they're not willing to go to any lengths for the recovery. They're like, I can't do 90 meetings in 90 days. I'm too busy for this. I'm too busy for that. I can't. They got 1,000,001 excuses for every suggestion you make to them. They're not ready yet. They haven't been beaten badly enough. I know for me, until I had my ass thoroughly kicked by the drugs, and the drugs simply just weren't working effectively. They weren't giving me the desired result anymore. When I was a slave to something that wasn't giving me the payback that I had in the earlier days, when it finally got to that point, then I had the desperation and willingness to go to any lengths to stay clean. When I was younger, frankly, it was very much a contingent thing. I could stay clean really when I wanted to, but really I was just waiting for the coast to clear up so I could get back to doing what I wanted to do anyway. That was the truth, And thank God for Narcotics Anonymous, because had I not found NA at a young age and came in here for those rest stops that I had, because I wouldn't even say that I really had recovery back then, but I did stack up some time here and there. And by stacking up that time here and there, I think it gave me enough clarity to not catch the big cases that wound up getting me in prison for the rest of my life, but it slowed my roll down just enough where I didn't deteriorate as bad. And when I see people that are in the program like that and they want to just stay clean off just the coffee and bullshit, and they're not interested in doing steps or really doing the whole deal, hey, hang on as long as you can. You never know when that switch is going to turn for you. We have moments of clarity throughout our lives, and we never know. Every clean day is a miracle, and every clean day is a beautiful gift that many addicts don't get out there. So as long as we're clean today, we've got an opportunity to turn this thing around, and I can decide at any moment if I really want to get serious about this thing and have a spiritual awakening and maintain a spiritual awakening and gain all the gifts that this beautiful program has to offer me and jump into the herd and have this whole deal, that's available to me. If I would just want to hang around on the outskirts, and see how long I can hang on to the edge of the lifeboat without quite climbing in all the way, welcome. Hang on to the lifeboat. We can take the hit. I'm glad you're here. You don't have to be a member. You can hang out as much as you want to. And, my encouragement is that, maybe you find something in here attractive enough to make you want to give up the current way of life that you're living today, that you too, like our literature says, that anybody that's willing to put in the effort into this thing can have this thing. There's not special random people that get this thing. If we surrender to it, we follow the directions that this book contains, we can have recovery and be free from active addiction. We don't have to keep living in our deceptive thinking and the lies that we tell ourselves. We have regained good physical health many times only to lose it again by using. Our track record shows that it is impossible for us to use successfully, no matter how well we may appear to be in control. Using always brings us to our knees. Like other incurable diseases, addiction can be arrested. We agree that there is nothing shameful about being an addict, provided we accept our dilemma honestly and take positive action. We're willing to admit without reservation that we are allergic to drugs. We break out in handcuffs. Common sense tells us that it would be insane to go back to the source of our allergy, but we're not sane yet. Our experience indicates that medicine cannot cure our illness. And just like the drugs out there, and they've been saying this since I was 15 years old. It doesn't make sense to try to fix a drug problem with drugs. We're going to abuse them. That's what addicts do. They could invent the perfect pill that would make the disease of addiction go away. My first thought would be, well, I wonder what 10 of them would do. Because if one's good and gets rid of the monkey, then 10's got to be some good shit, right? So I flunked moderation. It doesn't work for me. If they work for me, then there'd be a lot of other people that were hanging on the methadone line that'd still be here today. It doesn't fucking work. Eventually, we have to get completely clean off any and all mood-altering changes or chemicals, or we're still living in that same deceptive thinking, Anyway, medicine cannot cure our illness. They haven't invented a pill for it yet, so it's highly unlikely they will. Although physical and mental tolerances play a role, many drugs require no extended period of use to trigger allergic reactions. Our reactions is what makes us addicts, not how much we use. Many of us did not think that we had a problem until the drugs ran out. Even when others told us that we had a problem, we were convinced that we were right and the world was wrong. If they'd just get off my back. If they just make the shit cheap and legal and let it come out of vending machines, it'd be all right, right? That's what I thought when I was younger. My perfect fantasy when I was in my teenage years in NA was like, man, if I could just have unlimited money, have my own island, import hookers and blow at will, and whoever didn't do the game and play the way I wanted them to play, they off my island. If I could just have my own little island with my own laws and creator of my own little universe, I'd be happy. And in the early days, it probably would have been okay. But the problem with the drugs is that the more drugs takes less effect. It's always that vicious cycle. We start off this little bit, gets us high and makes us feel good. And then we got to take this much more to feel that same little good, and this much more drugs to feel this much little good. And they keep going more and more and more and get less and less and less and less effect, to where that window of euphoria that we get shrinks to, like, every day I'm just trying to struggle to maybe get a couple of minutes of relief. And the juice ain't worth the squeeze anymore. The effort that I got to put into it, it just doesn't work for me anymore. But that whole little island thing is kind of what happened to me later on in life. I put together some clean time in NA, and just before I turned 18, I got clean. I stayed clean until right at 22 years old, and in that time, I was clean that whole time. I got involved with service, H&I work, and did the whole bit. I was in. Not real. I mean, I don't think I had this great spiritual awakening back then, but I worked the steps to the best of my ability, and I made my choice that I was going to go out and do a couple 8 balls and come back in 2 weeks. And honestly, I thought I could do that. And I went out for 14 years. And in that 14 years, I I really didn't do any of the crazy drugs that were going to wind up getting me arrested. I did the legal stuff, and I hit doctors up for prescriptions and bought those prescriptions when I couldn't keep the scripts filled up enough. And I was kind of, buying it on the black market and all that kind of stuff. I was still very much doing stuff that was kind of illegal, but I had a nice little period of time in life in there where I didn't have the law on my back anymore. I was making enough money to keep the roof over my family's head and keep myself in the dope at the quantities that I wanted to. And I was still miserable inside. But it did at least finally negate that fantasy that I had about the island. Because the island fantasy that I had when I was younger, I was going to have that fantasy until that fantasy was proved wrong. I really believe that God kind of let me have a nice little ride there for a period of time where, guess what, Slick, you're still miserable. Here you go. You got everything you wanted to. Your wife's off your back. You're making money. You got the money, the dope, the woman, the cars, the bikes. You got everything. And I'm still contemplating suicide. It's popping on my radar pretty damn regular, because in the early stages, the drugs were working really good. And when they were working really good, the suicide kind of fell off the radar for a while because my solution was working really good. And later on, it didn't matter the drugs and the different combinations of drugs that I kept doing. That thought of wanting to eat a bullet, even though my outside circumstances were okay, my bills were paid, my kids were happy, I stayed in the same house. I had a lot of little things that outside circumstances looked like rats had a pretty good thing going on. My own wife didn't even know that I was wanting to eat a bullet, yeah, there was that. Although physical and mental tolerance play a role, many drugs require no extended period of use to trigger allergic reactions. Our reactions to drugs is what makes us addicts, not how much we use. Many of us did not think we had a problem until the drugs ran out. Even when others told us that we had a problem, we were convinced that we were right and the world was wrong. We used this belief to justify our destructive behavior. We developed a point of view that enabled us to pursue our addiction without concern for our own well-being or the well-being of others. Did whatever I wanted to when I wanted to. We began to feel that the drugs were killing us long before we could ever admit it to anyone. We noticed that if we tried to stop using, we couldn't. We suspected that we had lost control over drugs and had no power to stop. Certain things followed as we continued to use. We became accustomed to a state of mind that was common to addicts. We forgot what it was like before we started using. We forgot about the social graces. We acquired strange habits and mannerisms. We forgot how to work. We forgot how to play. We forgot how to express ourselves and show concern for others. I really didn't care about others. We forgot how to feel. While using, we lived in another world. We experienced only periodic jolts of reality and moments of clarity and self-awareness. It seemed that we were at least two people instead of one, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We ran around trying to get our lives together before our next run. Sometimes we could do this very well, but later it was less important and more impossible. In the end, Dr. Jekyll died and Mr. Hyde took over. Each of us has a few things that we can say we never did. We cannot let these things become excuses to use again. Some of us feel lonely because of the differences between us and other members. And this makes it difficult to give up old connections and old habits. We got to look for the similarities around here. We didn't all use exactly the same things in the same ways, although it seems like a lot of areas people kind of gravitate to each other. You walk into, it's not healthy. I don't even get into that. That's tradition stuff. Never mind. You derail that one. We all have different tolerances for pain. Some addicts needed to go to greater extremes than others. Some of us have found that we had enough when we realized that we were getting high too often and it was affecting our daily lives. It took a whole lot more for that, for me. At first, we were using in a manner which seemed to be social or at least controllable with little indication of the disaster that the future held for us. At some point, our using became uncontrollable and antisocial. I don't want to share my dope with nobody unless you had more than I did. This began when things were going well and we were in situations that allowed us to use frequently, my little island story. This was usually the end of the good times. We may have tried to moderate, substitute, or even stop using, but we went from a state of drugged success and well-being to complete spiritual, mental, and emotional bankruptcy. This rate of decline varies from addict to addict, and it's not always the same way. but it's always progressively. We get worse at being able to stop. We get worse at being able to pull our shit together before our next one. The days that we could get it together for a minute, they just fade away. We can't even do that no more. In that 14 years, my most clean day was 7 beers and 3 Lortabs, and I remember it vividly. On that run, that was as close to being clean as I got during that. I wished I could get my ass back in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, but my ego just wasn't going to allow it, and the disease just owned me. Whether it is in years or days, it is always downhill. Even when we switch from one drug to another, different drugs have different rates of decline, right? Some take us down really, really quick. If you're on that liquid drug, you can probably afford that habit, and it's a slow ride. Most people can come up with $30 for alcohol a day and, stay pretty well liquored up like that without having to, completely go into debt, and as long as you can nut up and go to work every day on a hangover, maybe you can string that together, and that'd be progressively slower ride downhill, but it's all downhill. It's just a slower rate of decline. Where when I was doing all the go fast and blow and burn the hole in my nose and going through a quarter ounce of Coke every few days, guess what? That rate of decline is really, really quick when you're staying up for a week to 10 days at a time and all that kind of stuff. You come down a lot faster, a lot harder, but it's always a downhill ride. There's not even addict after addict, there's never a point where it seems like drugs get better and better and better and better and better and better. They work less and less and less and less for twice as much work, for twice as much work, for twice as much work. It's always that story. Those of us who didn't die from the disease will go on to prison, mental institutions, or complete demoralization as the disease progresses. Drugs had given us the feeling that we could handle whatever situation might develop. We had become aware, however, that drugs were largely responsible for having gotten us into our worst predicaments. Some of us may spend the rest of our lives in jail for a drug-related crime or a crime committed while using. We had to reach our bottom before we became willing to stop. And I touched on the bottom thing earlier. And old timers used to drill that bottom stuff into us when I was younger, man, really, really bad. And I'm sorry, I've seen a lot of people that have gotten clean as teenagers, and I know quite a few people that, weren't even in their 20s yet when they got clean that have 30 and 40 years clean today. Their level of desperation and surrender back then probably wasn't near what it was for me, but they managed to come in here, find enough self-honesty to do whatever it took to work the steps and stay clean all these years. So it tells me that bottoms are simply when we make the decision that we're going to stop digging the hole deeper. As long as there's air in my lungs, I can always go back out and dig a deeper hole. I can screw this thing off tomorrow and go back out and relapse and dig me a nice little bottom that's going to be even worse. And I like to think that hopefully, I don't make the ultimate sacrifice and blow my freaking head off immediately with the shame and guilt of screwing this thing off again, that I hung around long enough to come back in here and give it another shot again. Because this is an insidious disease. But it doesn't matter how bad our bottom is. If we fail to continue making progress in our spiritual and recovery efforts, when we stop doing what it takes to work steps and go to meetings and do this deal all the way, when we stop doing that, our days are numbered until the relapse comes. So we don't have a neutral in Narcotics Anonymous, is what I'm saying. We're always going to be either in a state of growing or going. I can't just restore me like I did a truck and have it good for another 100,000 miles and run the wheels off of it again. I've got to maintain my recovery on the daily, and I'm never going to be cured. And this is a 24-hour thing. So no matter how bad my bottom is, if I don't maintain my level of recovery in here and being active in recovery, I know for me, I've got a serious monkey. Okay, so I believe many people have different. Some people have cute little spider monkeys on their back, and some people have big old gorillas on their back. I no doubt have a big gorilla on my back, and the only way that I'm going to keep this thing subdued is by working a healthy program of recovery. And if I don't work a healthy program of recovery, I can start seeing the side effects of it in my personal life almost immediately, when I'm not praying regularly, when I'm not meditating regularly, when I'm not doing any service, when I'm not working with newcomers, when I'm not doing this thing the way this program is designed to be used, then I'm treating my recovery life like Russian roulette, right? Except for, instead of just putting one bullet in the chamber and spinning that thing, every day I'm putting another bullet in it, waiting until it's almost full. A gun's going to go off. I have a disease, and this hole inside me, it demands to be filled with something. So either I'm going to be filling it with the right shit, and I say this all the time, either I'm going to continue to be trying to keep it full with the right stuff, or I'm going to let it stay vacant until it gets hungry and thirsty enough that it has to be filled with something else, and my brain comes up with the right excuse to fill it with the wrong shit again. So no matter how bad my bottom was, and I see people come in here all the time with really, really bad bottoms. Sometimes I see people with worse bottoms than even mine. I mean, I never got threatened with having my kids taken away. I've seen lots of people have that kind of stuff here, threatened with major, major stuff, serious prison time and everything else. Everything balls to the walls. Get a little taste of this and do 90 days and then fade off the fucking radar and get loaded again, and they're gone. They had a bottom just as bad as I did. I don't think their life was any worse than the bottom that I'd hit when I came in here the last time. So it's not just the bottom. Consequences is what gets most of us here. But action and recovery is what keeps us here. If I don't keep the action going, then I'm going to get loaded again. It's only a matter of time. We had to reach our bottom before we became willing to stop. We were much more motivated to seek help in the later stages of our addiction. It is easier for us to see the destruction, disaster, and delusion of our using. It was easier for us to see the destruction, disaster, and delusion of our using. It was harder to deny our addiction when the problems were staring us in the face. Some of us first saw the effects of addiction on the people who were close to us. We were very dependent on them to carry us emotionally through life. We felt angry, disappointed, and hurt when they had other interests, friends, and loved ones, and kicked us to the curb. Smart people do. They move on and get done with our ass. The sick ones usually stick around and try to fix us. We regretted the past, I love this line, we regretted the past, dreaded the future, and we weren't too friggin' thrilled about the present. After years of searching, we were more unhappy and less satisfied than when it all began. Couldn't get our part of your fixed no more. Just couldn't get that little cloud to float anymore. Our addiction had enslaved us. We were prisoners of our own mind, condemned by our own guilt. We had given up ever stopping. Our attempts to stay clean had always failed, causing us pain and misery. As addicts, we have an incurable disease called addiction, which is chronic, progressive, and fatal. However, it is a treatable disease. We feel that each individual alone has to answer the question, am I an addict? How we got the disease is of no immediate importance to us, like I was talking about that. We are concerned with our recovery. We begin to treat our addiction by not using. Many of us sought answers but failed to find any workable solution until we found each other. Once we identify ourselves as addicts, help becomes possible. We can see a little of ourselves in every addict and a little bit of them in us. And that's another part that's really important to look for it's not whether you smoke it, shoot it, drink it, shove it up your ass, whatever you do to get the dope in us. Those things don't matter, whether you like the uppers, downers, whatever. The disease of addiction in the mental state of being a slave to something and chasing the very thing that is killing us is something that we all share in common. And when we leave our drug of choice and I love our literature. It says, we don't care what or how much you used. Basically saying, leave that shit at the door. We don't care. We don't give, it doesn't matter. The program of solution doesn't matter what we did before. The solution is the same no matter what drug we used. It does not matter. It is the same stuff. And it's also those little differences that we use. Like if I walk into a room and everybody's talking about fentanyl, and I was just drinking and smoking some weed and that was all I was doing, well, my head's going to make the excuse that I don't fit in with you guys. If I come into a room and I'm all about the fentanyl and all that shit, and I come in, it's just a bunch of crackheads in here sharing about that shit, I'm going to be like, oh, I don't really quite fit in here. So when we share drug specific and stuff in Narcotics Anonymous rooms, we're really helping other people that may not be that drug specific. When everybody's identifying, you're giving somebody else's disease some nutrient to build a case, and we don't need that because we do that shit to ourselves. So it's something we should be conscious of around here. We can see, and when we look for the similarities and not the differences, we can always identify with the disease of addiction that's inside each one of us. This insight lets us help one another. Our futures seemed hopeless until we found clean addicts who were willing to share with us. Denial of our addiction was what had kept us sick, and our honest admission enabled us to stop using. One of the most important things in the beginning, they call them indispensable principles of honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. First step, I got to get brutally honest with myself and quit judging myself by my intentions and big dreams and aspirations. And I need to look at me and my life for exactly what the fuck I've done with my life. And I need to own all my problems that I've created in my life, because that's what our literature talks about. Actually, I thought God was giving me a bad hand. I was always blaming God and other people for my problems. In reality, I created all my problems through my own actions. Life really dealt me very few random shit sandwiches. Most of the stuff that I went through was a direct result of the way I navigated and carried myself and dealt with the little problems that I did have. The people in Narcotics Anonymous told us that they were recovering addicts who had learned to live without drugs. If they could do it, so could we. The only alternatives to recovery are jails, institution, dereliction, and death. Unfortunately, our disease makes us deny our addiction. We think we're special, some kind of different. Just had some bad luck. If you are an addict, you can find a new way of life through the NA program. The NA program that would not otherwise be possible. We have become very grateful in the course of our recovery. Our lives have become useful through abstinence and by working the 12 steps in Narcotics Anonymous. We realize that we are never cured and carry the disease within us all our lives. We have a disease from which we do recover. Each day we are given another chance. We are convinced that there is only one way for us to live, and that is the NA way. Now that whole chapter, it leads us right to the fifth step of making the decision, that my life is unmanageable and I'm powerless over it, and that maybe this way of life will work for me. And I think it's all written to really just sell me on the idea to jumping into this thing, and if you identify with the problems and the feelings that chapter talks about, chances are the solution that's been working for us will work for you too. It gets into and when it gets into the third step in there, it talks in there that, about, resentment, anger, fear, depression, anxiety. All those things are common diagnoses for addicts in there. And when we find a little relief as we get a little further down the road in the steps from those things, not saying that outside help isn't something that many of us do need and should not ignore. Mental health is a serious thing, but many of us, when we first get clean, we're bipolar, manic depressive, we got paranoid schizophrenia. We got a little dose of so many different hats we could be wearing of different things just in the detoxing process of losing our best friend and how many days we may have been awake or how long we've been nodded out, our mental state. There's any one of a number of things, and getting down to being really clean off of any mind and mood altering drugs is a nice place to try to start off with and get 30 days that way first to see what it is that we really need. Because a lot of us come in here and we get, we do get multiple hats hung on us over the years. And it's, once we get caught up sometimes in these well-meaning doctors and stuff like that are trying to fix us, and we want to be fixed. We want an easy way. The American way, we just want to shove a pill down our throat to fix our damn problems instead of living our way into better thinking and changing the way we live. And we want the easier way, right? Whether, good doctors, we walk into a good doctor's office in our mid-30s and say, doctor, I'm suffering from depression and I don't know what to do. And then, well, you fat fucker, do you exercise? What do you eat like? What do you do? A good doctor's going to ask me those kind of questions. Most doctors these days say, well, which drug do you want? And they'll write you a script of 3 or 4 things. Say, go home and take this shit. Don't try to exercise. Don't try to diet first. We're going to give you another pill to fix all these things and counteract all these other things. Instead of taking ownership of what I'm putting into my body and being honest about what I'm doing to myself, and if you're in mid-30s and you're not getting any exercise, our brains and our bodies are designed to be used, and if we don't use them, we're going to suffer consequences of them. I mean, my sponsor told me right off in the beginning, in my second week clean, he had me get a gym membership. So get in there and start swimming some laps. I was smoking 3.5 packs of cigarettes a day. I was 365 pounds. I mean, what do you mean I'm going to go do this shit? But I was willing to go to any lengths and try it, and I'd done inpatient and I'd done outpatient. I'd been on the antidepressants. I'd been on several things before. This time I was going completely clean and following the suggestions that this man gave me. And I went to the gym and I started swimming some laps and I started getting in the steam room and the sauna and sweating out the toxins. And I started eating healthy and watching what I ate. And at 42 days clean, I quit smoking. I didn't smoke anymore. By the time I had 90 days clean, I was upstairs pumping free weights and started to feel healthier. And it dropped down about 25 pounds and things were going favorably for me. We have a disease, and it talks about in here, physical, mental, and spiritual disease that affects every area of our lives. And if we want good recovery, then we need to treat every area of our life. All those areas come together to make up the sum of my life. If I'm treating my body like a garbage can and not feeding a good nutrient, I'm putting junk and toxin in it and pounding fucking energy drinks like they're going out of style, and I'm, amped up on caffeine and sugar and carbs, and I'm not having a decent diet, my brain's not going to function quite right. My body's going to deplete the energy of what's going on in my brain. My brain lies to me enough. I don't need to give it any more ammo to screw with me. So if I want to give myself a good chance, I need to start trying to treat my physical side, my mental side, and my body side. And it's crazy how just a little bit of love and putting a little attention into those areas, I started feeling better about myself, and little by little, things started going favorably for me. Anybody got any questions about what we just read? Anybody feel like are we ready? Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's not a crazy amount, but the Who's an Addict chapter is, it and why are we here and what is the Narcotics Anonymous program. Those first 3 chapters, they've got a lot of stuff that, through reading and studying them, makes me realize for me that instead of that little boy when I was staring at the room, 9 years old, thinking God dropped me off on the wrong planet by mistake, I found where I belong in Zenoff Hall, reading the little white book of Narcotics Anonymous and reading some other literature that Narcotics Anonymous had sent me while I was locked up at 15 years old. And I didn't like the answers back then. I wasn't happy, believe me. I was 15 years old back in 1982, 83, walking in here, all these old crusty junkies that were in the room, because most of them were junkies back then, pat me on the fucking back saying, you're so lucky to get this at a young age. I was like, fuck you. I got screwed out of 25 years of good time. I've only been partying for 3 years here, and I'm already here, and everybody's on my back about my solution to life because the drugs were really working good. So I really wasn't happy about being here. But hindsight, looking back on it, man, my life would not be what it is today. I do really believe that I would be right now dead or doing life in prison had I not found Narcotics Anonymous at those young age and learned just a few things. Whether I liked the truth that I was learning back then or not, I got enough truth and self-honesty back then where, it kept me from doing a lot of crazy stuff that I would have done had I not learned what I learned in the rooms here, So yeah, that's probably about it for this wonderful Who's an Addict thing. Hope you might have got a little something out of it that might help you stay clean one more day and make the process seem a little bit easier. You know, I mean, I know, man. I'm passionate about this whole little reading thing because I read so much of our literature. I read over and over and over, and until it was read to me, going through the book, basically somebody spoon feeding it, just like I was trying to do tonight, and bringing the life little pages or paragraphs and stuff to you guys, it did not make sense to me. I read it and I wasn't comprehending it. My brain was pretty numb to it, but light bulbs really started to turn on for me, and it did start. Yeah, I am one. You know, I mean, when we're hearing these readings and I'm looking around and I'm seeing people's heads go, yeah, and the little bobblehead doll stuff that we look around here and see each other doing it. That's what makes this thing work. The identification, you know, like, yeah, I'm one of those too. Because if you identify with my problem, you might be able to really, really identify the solution that us have got predecessors that have some time around here that are really living and doing this thing, that it will work for you too. You know, because these are lofty spiritual principles that we're talking about back here. You know, I mean, cleaning a house and, you know, taking inventory of ourselves. I mean, it's contradictory of everywhere else we live. Most of us have spent our lives, you know, we got our barbers, we got our bartenders, we got the dope house people that we talk to, and we sit around with all of our friends, and we sit around talking about the girlfriend as a fucking blah, 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 and our boss is that, and our parents were this. We sit around, we spend our lives, especially when our lives are train wrecks, blaming everybody else on the planet, from the president to the police, about our damn problem. You know, and if God and the police would have got off my back, I'd be okay, you know. But the reality of it is, motherfucker, if you weren't committing felonies, you wouldn't be doing no time, you know. I mean, I was pissed off because I wasn't getting away with shit that I see other people getting away with. But I don't think anybody really gets away with stuff, you know. At the end of the day, you know, we all pay a price for the way we live our life. And if we want a better way of life, we've got to live a better quality of life. It's not that hard, you know. I mean, the bad thing is that I got this king baby inside me that always wants to do what it wants to do, when it wants to do, and it wants to keep getting away with taking action on the bright ideas it has, instead of staying connected to listening to this little voice inside me. And I mean, I've always known what was right and wrong. I just have always chose to do the other stuff. I've always had a craving for the bad shit. I don't know why. I always used to get mad at God. It was like, could you give me a break here? Let me like something that was good for me? Because it seemed like everything that was bad for me, I wanted it 10 times worse than anything that was good. And I had to prove to myself that it wasn't going to give me the result I wanted to before I was going to change my way of living and try something different. But if you're beaten enough and you really are willing to go to any lengths to have this thing, it's more than available to anybody here. So thanks for letting me share, and let's close this thing up. Get out here on an early night.
Third step. Okay. Yeah. Beautiful to say.
Take our will in our lives, guide us in our recoveries, show us how to live. Wah, 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 wah.